We are going live again. We are going live again. Becoming influencer on YouTube. Do you set it on YouTube for your students to be available, or is it some institutional instruction to do it? Or?
Is it available for everyone?
That was the first time last time that I saw this, like doing a Zoom meeting, and then it's being sent live on YouTube. So last time I was a little bit surprised.
So is it okay?
It's okay.
Because in here we need your information. And easy to get for the student study. About because of English action and the animation, we need to learn more. Study more. Dedicate.
Do you see on the screen my mouse moving?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay. We are begin now. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. Today we have a special guest lecture about methodology, and the topic is logic and orthoplastic in science. And we already know Dr. Philip X. Fuchs. Now is 2 times or 3 times in teaching in here. First, I would like to give time for Dr. Stella Hayu to give a few words to Dr. Phillips. Please welcome Dr. Setio Rahayu.
Okay, thank you, Bu Titin. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Selamat pagi. Thank you for joining in this virtual webinar. This webinar, research methodology with topic about logic and other basic in science by Dr. Philip X. Fuchs, Ph.D. from National Taiwan University. Special to Dr. Philip. Thank you very much for joining and sharing knowledge to my students for education graduate program Universitas Negeri Semarang. And thank you to Dr. Sri Sumarti Ningsih, Ph.D. As moderator and contact person for this event. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, have a nice and enjoy webinar. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Back to Mrs. Sri Sumarti Ningsih.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Dr. Setio Rahayu. And now the time for Dr. Phillips for beginning to give a lecture. As you know, Dr. Phillips is a young lecturer and also young researcher in here. And he's also our partner collaboration in last March, right? About the that. And now she's working in the National Taiwan Normal University Taiwan in Department of Athletic Performance. Please welcome Dr. Bernard Philip X. Fox. Now the time is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, and I also hope you will enjoy it. We will see. The last time I was talking way too much, so I will not speed up, but focus a little bit on the more important things, I hope. And so as you see, and rightfully it was introduced, the topic as the logic and other basics in science. So especially among sport science students or sport teaching or any studies related to sports, you may wonder, why is logic so important? Or why is this guy talking about logic? So I want to introduce myself a little bit briefly for you, just to understand why I think this is important and why I think it's important for everyone and not only for your studies. So first about me, I did my sports studies, mainly the bachelor and master, but in parallel with these studies, I also studied philosophy a little bit just for fun. And what I found very interesting during these philosophy studies was logic, because logic is a big part of philosophy. And I found it very helpful for my sports studies, for my later scientific activities, but also for life in general. So it had a personal value for me. Then later I did my Ph.D. in sports science and the second Ph.D. in methods, models and technology. So my main focus is primarily on biomechanics. That's why for me it was quite fitting to add the second Ph.D. about, which was more methodological and using statistical models, and so more the technical stuff was helpful for me to advance in this field and use it in my biomechanical studies. I have some experience as a project coordinator where I was leading a quite large scientific research project in the European Union for 3 years. And now I'm working as a postdoc. I currently have 24 publications in the last 5 years, 5 still in submission. Yeah, it's going quite well currently, and most of them are in high-ranked SCI journals. So it's I think it's quite important for young researchers, if you want to follow this way, to see and find possibilities how you can publish your research. Quite important. So what we are going to do is talk about logic and some fundamental basics, how to approach science. We will discuss what is logic and how does it work, because usually the general conception people have about logic is not very accurate. And I think it's very easy to understand what logic really is and how it can be helpful for you. And this entire lecture is not meant as something where I give you simple solutions and afterwards, after 1 or 2 hours, you leave the lecture and then you're smarter by a certain amount and you apply it in your studies or in your life. But this is meant more like an inspiration to think about these things. Maybe you find it interesting, maybe not. If not, then okay, it's not your thing. But for me, it was like I went to philosophy studies and I was very surprised about what I have learned there about many things, but in particular about logic. And it kind of triggered something in me to go a little bit deeper, to do some individual research, to watch more lectures online and so on. And I really found it helpful. So maybe it is interesting for you, and then it may be very inspiring and helpful, maybe for the rest of your life, maybe for 2 days. We want to improve your understanding of what is correct thinking, because in the end, logic is a set of laws how to think properly. But I will tell you more about it soon. And the second part, the so-called other basics in science, is how to build a solid research project, how to approach research, how to do it, and how to implement it then step by step. So what are the single steps? What is important to be aware of? In the second lecture, in 3 or 4 weeks, it will be more about methods and statistics. But I will not dive too deep into specific statistical analyses and tell you step by step in the program or in the software like SPSS, which click you have to do and so on. But try to advance your general understanding for a variety of statistics and how to use them, how to find the right statistics and so on. Okay, so the first thing, let's start. What is the one of the most important things for a scientist to be a good scientist? And already in the beginning, the important thing is that a good scientist needs to be unbiased. You should not have a preoccupied mindset or a special interest in a specific outcome. And this question of how to become a good scientist is in this way important for you as students, because basically when you study any sort of sports science or any other science, basically you're at the beginner's level and you try to make a mini study in your final thesis, for example. So you should try to apply these rules or these principles that are very valuable or distinct the good from the bad scientist. And what I mean by having no interest in specific outcome means you should not look for a certain difference or a certain phenomenon and so on. But you should be open-minded to whatever will the outcome be. You should not have a will to prove something. This means if you come from a specific sport, for example, you are a soccer player or a dancer or something like this, obviously you are very interested in the sport and you have passion for it and you have your opinions, of course. But what is crucial to avoid is to go into a scientific study in this sport. Then you do it in the sport because you are interested in it. And then you want to prove that your opinion is the right one. This would be quite bad, definitely not recommended. And many problems will follow when having this kind of mindset. So basically there is nothing to prove. There is just something to be tested and results to be reported. So you don't start a study with the wish to prove or to find a specific outcome that confirms your opinion or you are right or this method is the better one and so on. But you do research in the literature and then you have a theory about it. Your opinion may be that this theory is right. Okay, that's it. But it's not about you to prove this, it's about testing it. And your job is to test it, to find the best evidence of the one outcome or the other one. And your job is just to result this evidence. So that's something different in terms of mindset. And that's also something different how you present things. So many times when people think they have negative results or it's not significant and so on, then they think it's not so good. I think that's not necessarily true. Sometimes it is, but whenever it is, usually the case is that the literature research was not done properly, and you missed some information. If you had this information, you would have done something different in your study, or you would raise different questions. So already in the beginning, kind of your questions were a little bit nonsense or not necessary. And then you don't find something because there were other factors influencing the real phenomenon or affecting the outcomes that you didn't really measure. Stuff like this can happen. So it's very important to do your literature research in the beginning, open-minded, neutrally, as good as you can, and then find just the best way to find evidence to test it. And that's it. And then there is also no need for pressure, psychological pressure, when you report results, because it's not your results, is not your opinion or not your, not even your performance really, or your success. It's just what the data shows. So also when people go to a conference, it's not really necessary to be anxious or stressed about the results itself. Okay, make a good presentation, make good reasoning, be sure that the methodology is at a high level and so on. But if this is all done, then everything is fine. Doesn't matter what are the results. It's not your fault, let's say. And then the fourth point is don't select the outcomes that fit your desired picture of reality. So this is what I mean is you have your opinion, you have a picture of how reality works, how this specific case you want to investigate should be like. And you collect multiple data, usually not only one variable, but multiple variables. And a bad practice would be to select the specific variables that show the differences or correlations and so on that fit your picture, your wish, how it would be, and then present it saying, oh, see, there are these differences, 8 out of 8 differences, all these differences, it's a very big deal. But in reality, maybe you collected 100 variables and only 8 of them were significant, and you hide all the other 92. So that would be a a bad practice. And this only happens, obviously, if you have this wish and this will to prove something in the first place. If you don't have it, there is no need to do this. So the main point of this slide to take away is getting a neutral, objective, open-minded, open mindset. The philosophical requirement to do this is not so easy, in fact. And this goal you have in many matters of life, where you want to be not emotionally attached to something, because then it shakes you off balance very easily if something goes wrong. So this is something you want not only in studies or not only in your professional life, no matter what kind of job you do later on, but also in your personal life. You want to be able to see things clear, to behave rationally, to think rationally. So when you face an observation or you make an experience, try to restrain from emotional judgment. Don't go there and say, this is good, this is bad, I like this, I don't like this, prematurely. And especially as a scientist, or if you do some scientific work, you should try to not put your personal subjective opinion onto the topic. Be neutral. And don't be driven by your personal belief. Oh, I think this is the best way to do it, so now I do research to find out that this is the best, and I want to confirm this is the best. There should be no mission to confirm yourself. So nothing of what a scientist is doing should be about the scientist. It should be about advancing the knowledge. Science is creating knowledge or advancing knowledge. This is the job. So that's why the main conclusion of this slide is detach from yourself, from your emotional judgments, from your personal beliefs and so on, and just do your rational job, which is finding the best evidence for what seems to be unclear. That's it. Easier said than done in many aspects of life. Okay, and the first step to do any scientific work is to read the literature, finding out what is the existing knowledge right now at this stage. And we need to read a lot. We need to understand these things, and we need to understand what they imply, what the findings imply, what are the consequences, what does it mean. And of course, in the discussion section and in conclusions of any work, there you make interpretations. It's very important for you as an independent scientist who is reading other stuff to not just believe or trust very easily the main message or the conclusion of other people's work, of other people's statements, of other people's conclusions. It's a little bit, maybe it's a little bit crazy, but maybe especially within the last few years, some of you may face, there are so many people saying so many things, and it's always good to check if these things are right. People not necessarily even want or intend to lie. Sometimes you just make wrong conclusions, or you make inappropriate interpretations. And it's not even your intention to do something bad or to lie or to decide for inappropriate actions or anything like this. But people have simply different opinions, and that's absolutely fine. So if you want to trust someone else's opinion, you can just copy it. Okay, but that's not your opinion, and it doesn't need to be true. Not for you, maybe not for many, many others. It was only apparently what this one person thought at best, if this person did not intend to lie. The second thing is, and this is why I said true for you, because there is no real worldwide truth. And especially not in science. There is no truth. You cannot just refer or cite one reference and saying, oh, the world works like this. This is not what science can provide. It's not even possible. There are only more or less solid findings. So each piece of scientific work, each manuscript, is providing some evidence about a certain topic that are supposed to help answering certain questions. That's it. That's no truth. This is no proof of any aspect of how the world is working. So take that into your mind. This is the reason why it's necessary, in my opinion, to not just believe anything, but to check for yourself. Because maybe you will come to a different opinion after seeing the same data, after seeing the same methodology in the study. And you will say, yeah, but I see a problem there, so I cannot trust this outcome. The other one is very good, so, but what does it mean in combination? So better check it for yourself. And there are basically two different ways of checking things, checking how valid they are. The first thing is to check the content and the facts of the single statements. Every fact should be derived from the current study or supported by references. So everything you do, everything you write or say should be either come from your own data or should be supported by references you use. Otherwise, where do you take this information from? Maybe it's totally made up, or maybe it's just what you think or what you believe. And this goes for you if you do something, if you write something, your thesis or another manuscript or doing your presentation. But the same goes when you check the content of other people. So when people say something, but they don't support it with any data, with any reasoning, with any references, nothing, they just say it. It has no value at all. It's just like, you can say anything you want. So that's the first important thing, to check the content, the fact of the single statement. This means if I say the ball is green, the content, the fact of the statement is that this object, being balls, has a certain color. So I need to check this. Why do you say this? Okay, you show a picture. Oh, I also see it's green. Okay, but you need to check it. The second thing, and that's something completely different, is to check the validity of the link between the statements. How is statement 1 linked to statement 1? How is this is the reasoning? How do you build the structure? And how do you conclude something from different statements? And this is exactly what is part of logic. And then when we ask ourselves if reasoning makes sense, that is it logical? And so these two things are completely different. For the first one, you need to have knowledge about this topic. You need to know balls or colors if you want to check if the ball is green, if the statement is true. And the second thing, how the sentences are linked. You don't need knowledge about the topic of the sentence, but what you need is knowledge about logic or a good understanding. We do this intuitively, naturally, but I will show you, and I think you will understand, that what we think naturally to be logic is a very poor understanding of logic. So first of all, what is it? Logic is the art of correct thinking. The Google definition, and this is taken from a very old book, so nothing is a new thing, says reasoning, logic is reasoning that is conducted or assessed according to strict principles of validity. And this is already saying everything you need to know, I think. So the important thing is that logic is reasoning, and it follows strict principles. The book was called An Investigation of the Laws of Thought. So in logic, there are laws that are very, very strict. That's the very first thing to understand. Logic is not something individual. Very often in daily life, we say, oh, to me, that's not logic. You may think so, but for me, it's not logic. That has nothing to do with logic. Logic has rules, has laws. They are very strict. They apply to anyone in the world. Logic is not something that is, these laws are made by humans as nature laws were made, but humans didn't invent them. Like gravity wasn't invented by humans. It was just Newton describing them and finding out these laws to describe what he observes in the world. The same goes for logic. This is nothing that is made up and, oh, for Europeans, it's logic like this. Oh, for Asians, it's different. For Americans, it's different. No, it's around the world. Logic is the same thing, and it's very strict, and it's like laws, like nature laws. You can compare it with gravity laws and so on. And logic is the core discipline of philosophy, but it's also a subdiscipline in other studies, mainly in mathematics and in IT. So if you study one of these studies, you will have some lectures about logic. And these people know better how to describe logic, how to apply. They know these laws, these rules very exactly at a theoretical level. So way beyond what any one of us is intuitively applying when they think, when they make conclusions and so on. We apply these logic rules, or we follow them all the time. But it's very helpful to understand them at a theoretical level, because you will see they are not so easy, but they are quite powerful if you use them. Philosophy is the mother of all sciences. As you know, maybe in ancient Greece, the philosophers that were dealing with many observations in nature, and basically they were philosophers, but in the same time they were nature scientists and observing the nature and all the rules and so on. And then from philosophy later on, kind of people specialized on specific fields and so on. And as a core discipline of philosophy, logic was meant to guarantee that the way of thinking was correct, that the way of making conclusions was correct. So this is a fundamental basis of how to implement any science. So that's why I think it's so important for all sciences. Philosophy developed the fundamental rules of how to think and how to gain knowledge, which is the purpose of science and which is the reason why it is so essential for any sciences. But I haven't seen so far, I have been at quite some universities around the world, in Europe and in Asia. I haven't seen so far in biomechanics and sports science and so on, but also in engineering and neurosciences. I have some colleagues. I never saw that they have lectures and they learn about logic, but I think that's the fundamental rule of how to pursue science. So I think in many of the nature sciences, there is a really poor understanding of how logic works. And the reason why it is so valuable, and now we get to the confusing but interesting part, is that logic and these rules are 100% abstract. And this means content independent. So in logic, you don't use the content, you don't say, you don't talk about balls having a certain color, which is green or something. You can reduce all this information, take it away, and make it 100% abstract. So logic becomes like a language that is similar to a mathematic formula. So it's completely free of content. And the reason why this makes it so valuable is because you don't need to be an expert in this content to understand if the logic is right. So this means you will understand, no matter what is the topic, what other people are talking. Maybe you have an expert talking about health, you have an expert talking about climate change, anything. It doesn't matter. You can identify if the logic is incorrect or not, even if you don't know anything about health or anything about climate change. That's the powerful thing. So just by how people reason, how they link their sentences, how they try to make sense of single statements, put them together and draw conclusions, you will know if this makes logically sense, if it is correct or not. So again, this has nothing to do with single facts. And if you don't have any expertise in this topic, you cannot assess if the facts are true or correct. But you know if the reasoning is correct. I want to give you some simple examples. So as I said, it's very strict rules, and it's about abstraction, taking away all the information. So you have these two statements, number 1 and number 2, and then you have two alternative conclusions. These conclusions, 3.1 and 3.2, are drawn from the two statements, number 1 and number 2. So statement number 1 is all balls are green. Okay, that's a very simple statement. The second one is this object shown on the screen next to it is a ball. And then you see the ball. So the question is, as a conclusion of these two statements, which of the next sentences is correct, 3.1 or 3.2? The mentioned object, which you see, is green, or the mentioned object is red. And there is a very clear answer to it at a logical level. If all balls are green and this object is a ball, then the only logical right conclusion is that this mentioned object is green. If someone says the mentioned object is red, that may be right in terms of content, but not in terms of logic. So if this object is really red, then there must be a conflict within the statements before. So we can rephrase these sentences, making them abstract, more abstract, not 100%, because we still use words like all and are and is. But in the future, we even don't need these anymore. But for now, the way to make it more abstract would be to change all balls are green into all A's are B. So A will become ball and green will become B. And then the next sentence would be C, the object, is an A, is a ball. And if we remove all this information, it gets easier for us to understand why 3.1, the mentioned object is green, must be right. Because if we say all A's are B and C is an A, then it's clear that C must be an B. If someone tells you C is D, which is something completely new, that's not a valid conclusion. It comes from nowhere, basically. Because D is conflicted with B, so the D is not B, so it cannot be true. Yeah, so 3.1 is logically correct, and it's not a discussion about opinions or different ways of logic and so on. This is universal. Logic always refers to conclusions. So as a conclusion of statement 1 and 2, only 3.1 can be logically correct. So 3.2 must be logically incorrect. It's not a valid conclusion based on statement 1 and 2. That's the important thing to take away. As an independent statement, 3.2 could be right, but if it is right, then one of the other statements must be wrong. Either 1, all balls are green, or 2, this object is a ball. One of them must be wrong then. And again, this is not a matter of expertise in a specific field. So you don't need to be an expert in balls, you don't need to be an expert in colors, but you can judge if someone makes the wrong conclusions. You can know, you can identify it's wrong or it's right. That's what I mean. It's so powerful. And I want to stress that for me, for example, in daily life, this is really very powerful, because whenever people say something, when they try to convince you, when they want to make a point and so on, you just listen and you can find out a lot more than usually when you are not aware or sensitive towards these rules. And the thing I want to also to make clear is this is a very theoretical thing, and I am also not very good in all the detailed rules and so on. So I didn't learn all of them by heart, but because I only had few lectures during my philosophy studies, it's not like I'm a logician or a well-expertised philosopher, not at all. But already for me, it's so helpful to have a somewhat improved understanding for this. This is what I want to make clear. Otherwise, it may be a little bit overwhelming for you when you see like all the formula, all A's or B's and so on, and when it's getting more complex and it's confusing and so on. It's not about knowing all these rules. It's not about learning them all by heart. It's about getting some understanding of them. So the next step, how we can make more abstraction, is to remove also these small words and exchange them, replace them with other symbols that have the same meaning. For me, this was a little bit a new idea when I had this at university first. For 1 year now, I started learning Chinese a little bit, and then basically it's the same thing, right? You have a word which uses only one character or one or two or something, but it represents a certain meaning instead of being built up by many letters and creating a sound. So it's the same concept. It's nothing strange. The only difference is that basically the grammar of this logic language is the same as in mathematics, you could say. And with this, using symbols and following an existing grammar that is very distinct, you can phrase anything, any sentences, even what I say now, you could phrase in the logic language. And so this is what I mean by being 100% abstract. It's not necessary that you can phrase everything you want to say in this language, but it's just, I want to show you that this is possible and that it's 100% abstract, which gives it its power, the power of knowing if something is logically correct, no matter the content. So you already saw we replaced the ball by using the letter A. What we have now is a new statement or a structure here, and we have this first. So we have the brackets, same function as in mathematics. We have this first part. Its meaning is not. So if something is not the case, you put this in advance of before the thing you want to address, which is a small letter A representing smoking. So this in combination means not smoking. This one here, like the rooftop of a house, means and. And it is an inclusive way of saying and. It means both conditions must be fulfilled. Not one of them, but both. And then the arrow represents the condition if something happens, if the thing that is described before the arrow, then something else happens, namely the thing that comes after the arrow. So if we combine all this information, this example basically means if you do not smoke and in the same time you have a specific heart functionality, for example, heart frequency of 120, I don't know, 80, 60, then you are healthy. If not A and B, then C. If you're not smoking and you have a specific heart functionality, then you are healthy. So in logic, what is used very often is a table of truth, which you see here and at the bottom right. T stands for it's true, and F stands for it's false. It's not the case. So T, something is the case. F, something is not the case. And when you observe the single parts of this equation and you find that this condition is true, this is the case, someone is not smoking and he is having this specific heart functionality, and in the same time you observe that the outcome C is also true, that's the case, then this conclusion is true. So this is basically what this conclusion says. If this is true and this is also true, then the conclusion is true. It's getting more interesting. So basically this is what you want to do in science, right? You want to test something, you find out, oh, this is the case, I also get this outcome, okay, then this is supporting evidence that this is true. It's not a proof yet, but the better you do this, the more often this is confirmed, the better is your evidence to support this conclusion. Now, the interesting part is, if this is true, if the observation about smoking and the heart frequency is true, someone is not smoking, someone has a specific heart functionality, but the outcome is false, it's not, he or she is not healthy, then the conclusion is false. It cannot be true. Because this is basically what the conclusions say. If this is true, then this must be true, otherwise this cannot be true. And if this is wrong, so you have a different state, someone is smoking, then basically it doesn't matter what is the outcome, because this is not what you wanted to investigate. The conclusion can still be true. If someone is smoking, he can be healthy, yeah, conclusion can be true. If someone is not smoking, okay, but he has a different heart functionality, he can be healthy, it can be true, he can be not healthy, have a different reason. So the conclusion is still potentially true. So you can, by using this table, you cannot prove that something is true, but you can only prove that something is wrong, that something is false. And there is basically, as you see here, only one of these four options how you can prove something wrong. And this is making sure that the condition is true, but the outcome is wrong, is false. Only then you can prove that this conclusion cannot be true. An example of how you can combine things, and this goes, for example, drawing conclusions from multiple studies, is if now you have one study that observed a specific heart functionality, which is, we said, is B, after running 10 minutes a day. So this is a new component. This was not done in this study, in this statement, but this is a new study. So this means basically, if you do D, if you run 10 minutes a day, then you get B. Then the result will be a specific heart functionality. This is what this other study could have found out. Then you can combine these two statements, these two pieces of information. And the logically correct conclusion would be, because you can replace the B here by the D, then the conclusion would be that if you don't smoke here, non-A, you don't smoke, in combination with the 10 minutes of running, which is the D leading to B, leads to the healthy condition. So basically, you don't need a study that investigates if 10 minutes of running leads to a healthy condition in combination with non-smoking. If you know that non-smoking and the specific heart rate leads to health, and in addition, you know that running leads to the specific heart rate. So this is the combination of information and drawing the right conclusions. Please note that logic feels natural. As I said before, we use it naturally, intuitively, and we think something is logic or something appears logic to us. But it's not always true, or we are not always correct about what we think is logic. Because most of the times, our conclusions and what we think is logic is correct only at very simple levels, because we don't understand these rules. We have never really learned them. We learn them by living, basically, but we have no theoretical understanding of them. So our conclusions are most of the time or often only correct at simple levels. And most of the time, our conclusions are actually related to the content and based on the knowledge we have in the content, and not the actual conclusions. So what we think are our conclusions very often is not really a conclusion, but it is based on knowledge we have in this field. And then if we go into another field where we don't have this knowledge, you will see very quickly how people make wrong conclusions suddenly, because what they have done before is not a real logical conclusion. It's based on their expertise. And again, this is why I think it's so powerful to understand a little bit, just a little bit, about logic and these rules, because it allows you to assess, to understand things beyond your field of expertise. And you can identify if people make errors in their reasoning. And that's, I can really tell you that's quite cool, because you would be surprised how often very well expertised people are doing catastrophic errors in how they reason and what kind of conclusion they draw. And also in science, also other scientists. So it's nothing about being a smart person, being I don't know, knowing winning many prizes or anything like this. It's really surprising. And as you can see, so any sciences coming from philosophy, logic being the basic concept of how to approach it, you could say that the whole study design, any study design you make, needs to be conceptualized in a way that the outcomes of your study allow exactly these conclusions that you want to make to answer your research questions. So you have some research questions in the beginning, you want to answer them. And before thinking about what kind of methods I need to use, what kind of statistics I need to use, you need to think about how do I conceptualize the study design, the grand scheme of the study, to get kind of data that even allows me to draw the right conclusions. So in my opinion, logic is like the bottom layer, the fundamental thing where you build your methodology on it. And on the methodology or methods, you put the statistics. You need to first have an overall properly logical scheme for the study, then having the study design logically correct, drawing the right conclusions, then you think about how do I need to craft a methodology for my study? What kind of methods do I need to use to get these data I want? And then you put the statistics on top. How do I analyze these data now? So this is for me, the most important fundamental structure of any research work. Oh, I didn't change this. I was said to not call it a joke because it's not funny. So you could say it's a riddle, a small little quiz. 3 logicians. So you need to pay attention here, and you can ask yourself why are all these answers correct? So the story is 3 logicians enter a bar, and the waitress asks, "Hey guys, do you want some beer?" Logicians are people who did philosophy and they specialized on logic. So they are very good in logic. So the question is, "Hey guys, do you want some beer?" to all the guys. And the first logician says, "I don't know." The second one also says, "I don't know." And the third one answers, "Yes, please." So yes, we want some beer. The question is, why are all these responses correct? And what does the waitress need to serve? What does the waitress need to do now? And the answer is that logician 1 and 2 are missing information to ask this, to answer this question correctly. If logician 1 does not want a beer, he could answer no, because then it's clear the guys don't want some beer, because at least one of them himself, he doesn't want. So since he wants some beer, but he doesn't know about the others, he cannot answer if all guys want a beer. And the same goes for logician 2, because he is missing the information about what logician 3 wants. And logician 3 now sees, okay, he got some information from logician 1 and from 2, and he concludes correctly that if logician 1 and 2 understand this properly, they will say no if they don't want, but they don't know if they want. So he concludes they both want. And then he can say, yes, please, meaning yes, all of us want some beer. This is the way of how you can make conclusions. This is really a joke, and I heard this at university in a logic lecture. There is a stereotype saying that, so as I said, in mathematics, you also learn about logic. And in physics, you apply a lot of mathematics, of course, you know. So they also usually learn some logic. But in mathematics, there is a stereotype, or they make some jokes about physicians very often, that they are bad mathematicians, basically, because they are not really going so deep, the same level in mathematics, and they just learn what they need to apply it, stuff like this. And the joke is, a physician, a mathematician, and a logician from Germany are sitting in a train traveling across Austria. After 1 hour, the physician says, "Wow, all sheep in Austria are black." The mathematician comments, "In fact, you should only say, because this is the only thing you know, that all the sheep you have seen so far are black." And the logician adds, "To be precise, you should only say that at least the one side of the sheep that you see was black." So it's very important to be very precise about the information and not drawing wrong conclusions. So this is, of course, in practical real life, ridiculous. But the lesson of the story is that if you see, in this case, in the story, if you see an object, the sheep, you don't see the other side of the sheep. So you cannot say that the sheeps are black. Only the one side is black. And this is, of course, ridiculous. It's only a joke. But to a certain degree, it's true for life. We do draw conclusions very easily, very incorrectly. And yeah, then it can lead to wrong consequences, obviously. So it's important to be precise and to really reflect on what you see, what you hear, what is the data basically, and what you think it means for in life. Does it mean the sheep is black? Does it mean all sheep are black? No, clearly not. And now, before we go into a break, I have a quiz for you. So we will do it in a way. I will explain the quiz for you. We make a 5 minutes break then. You can think about it. You can exchange with your friends if you want. And afterwards, we find out if someone has found an answer he or she wants to share. And then afterwards, we finished the topic about logic and we move on with how to approach scientific research. And this will hopefully helpful for you, of course, to improve your understanding, but maybe also specifically to craft your own final thesis, or sooner or later you will need to do one, right? I don't know your current stage, but maybe you're a magister or master students and approaching to a final thesis. So it will be, you will need to follow these things to make a good work. Okay, so the quiz first. You ask a company to print game cards, and they should follow 2 rules. So you give 2 instructions to the company how to print the cards. On the one side of the letter, there is of one side of the card, there is a letter. On the other one, there is a number. And if the letter is a vowel, meaning an A, E, I, O, or U, if there is a vowel on the one side, then on the other side, there must be an even number, 2, 4, 6, 8, yeah, on the other side. So these are the only 2 instructions you give them. And the company prints the cards, does the job, and then they show you four cards as an example. And now what we assume is, you know that the company followed the first rule. The first rule saying one side is a letter, other side is a number. This rule is very easy. You trust the company, they did this right, okay? But you want to check now if they always followed the second rule. The second rule, meaning vowel on the one side, means there must be an even number on the other side. And now the question is, how many and which of the cards do you need to turn around? And the tricky thing is that because you're a student and you're lazy, you want to turn as few cards as possible. So don't just turn all the 4 cards around. Tell me exactly which of the cards you have to turn around to check if the second rule is followed. So that's it for now. We do 5 minutes break and then we come back and hopefully someone wants to give an answer. Good, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Philip. So we take a rest for 5 minutes. Silahkan, ini bisa menjawab pertanyaan dari Philips. Ditebak ada berapa jumlah kartu dan berapa kali nanti akan muter sesuai dengan yang ada di rules-nya 1 dan 2. Nanti yang mau jawab silahkan untuk raise hand. Sambil mikir ya. Nanti akan dapat hadiah. So if anyone can answer, there is have a gift from you.
Yeah, after the 5 minutes. So just to be
Yeah,
clear,
yeah.
the 4 cards are the 4 you
Yes.
see at the bottom of the slide. So the first one is A, the second one is 4, the third one is a P, and the last one is a 7. So the question is, which of these 4 cards, A4, P7, you need to turn around? Take your time, 4 or 5 minutes, and then we come back and together again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, already any answer? All of you? Please raise your hand to answer the question from Phillips Fox.
I just saw in the chat that I saw it was a direct message to me, but some people are asking for an email address, so I send it in the chat to everyone. What is my email address? So if some people have some questions afterwards, or asking for certain slides which they want to see again or something like this, I can share it. They can send me an email.
Thank you, Phillips.
We can also make a short question round if some people have questions about the logic stuff after this chapter now, because then we leave the logic topic and move on. So if some people have questions about logic, we can talk about them now and then move on.
Yeah, please, if any question and if any question or you wanna answer the question, just raise your hand and open your mic. Silahkan bila ada Bapak Ibu dan mahasiswa sekalian yang ingin bertanya atau menjawab pertanyaan, bisa langsung membuka mic-nya, mikrofonnya. Monggo. I think maybe it's too difficult because the logic, like when I was in high school, I got the logic, this one, and I'm file.
Yeah.
For me, maybe it's difficult, and I don't know about the others. Maybe it's same or not. And I hope anyone in here can have question or answer the question.
Yeah, I think so. In the logic lectures I had, most people did not like logic as a lecture, as a subject. I think it may be similar like statistics for many people. So I love it, yeah, but many people don't.
Yeah, but it's important.
But for me, the important thing is not someone thinking about the rules and if they can understand the abstraction, like what letter to use or something like this. For me, the only important thing for this lecture is basically that people understand that it's free of content, free of topic, and that they hopefully understood what makes it so powerful, that you can judge everything, at least the conclusions, not the topic, but the conclusions. If people reason correctly, if it makes sense how they reason, how they combine information. If someone understood this and says, yeah, but that's not interesting for me, that's okay. If someone says, yeah, I got this and it's interesting for me, that's very cool. Then maybe there are questions, maybe there are non-questions, maybe someone will ask questions in the future or go to courses or watch some videos. There is online lectures on YouTube and so on. So it's plenty of ways to educate yourself.
Yeah, thank you. You are very wise. Okay, it is very important.
I think the 5 minutes are
done. Yeah. Okay, anyone, you can raise your hand or you can open your mic directly to answer the question from Philips. Ade Rahmat, you have an answer?
It's also okay to just to express your thoughts, even if you don't have an answer, because maybe I should say I choose this quiz because when you understand the answer, when I tell you, it looks very simple. I'm sure many people will think, oh, that's yes, it makes sense. It's quite simple. But if you don't know it, then only 10% of people know the right answer.
Yeah, right.
And this is the power of logic, because logically it's very simple. Okay, maybe no answers. Then I will just tell it.
Yes, Mr. Major want to answer.
Oh, wait. Someone wants to say it or say something.
Hello.
Hello.
Not a student. I'm not a student on the this meeting, this occasional meeting, but I think I have an answer about your quiz.
All right.
Maybe if I choose I want to check the A because A mostly the first letter would be assigned with 1. 1 is not an even. A is the first number on the alphabet. I think if the company missed the rule of the second rule, there will be the A must be written by 1 on the other side. I think that is the answer, Phillips. How about you? Is that correct or?
Okay, interesting thinking. It's not fully correct. I will show you what is. Oh, 5-minute break. Yeah, we had this. Okay, but thank you very much for the idea, for your thoughts. Last year, there was also someone expressing his thoughts. It was also not correct, but it was also very interesting, and I was very glad of receiving it. I will never forget it, because he basically said you should not check at all. You should just use them. And if you find an error, you should sue the company. that was a brilliant answer. Okay, so thank you very much. And I will explain now. So you see the gray ones are the A and the 7.
Yeah.
These are the ones you need to turn around. And the reason is, I read out the second rule again. If there is a vowel, so if it is an A, an E, an I, an O, or an U, on one side, on the other side, there must be an even number, either a 2, a 4, a 6, or an 8. So obviously on the A, so your pick to check the A was correct. But it's not only the A, and the reasoning is a little bit different. The reason why you need to check the A is rather simple, I think, that the rule says if it is a vowel, you need an even number. So this is a vowel. A is a vowel. So on the other side, there must be an even number. So you must check it. You must check it. If it is a 2, 4, 6, 8, it's okay. Then the next one is a 4. Let's think about why you don't need to check the 4. The 4 is an even number. And the rule says only if it is a vowel, you need an even number. If it is not a vowel, then it doesn't matter if it is an even number or an uneven number. So if you turn around the 4 and it is a vowel, then the rule is correct, right? If you turn it around and it is not a vowel, it's still correct. If it is, let's say, a G or an H, it's still correct, but because the rule doesn't talk about non-vowels.
Yeah.
And if so no need to check the 4. Then also no need to check the P. That's rather simple also, again, I think, because the P is not a vowel. So the rule doesn't talk about P. It doesn't care. Even number, not even number, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And then the 7 is more difficult. You need to check the 7 because it's not an even number. So if you turn around the 7 and you find out it's a P or a G or an H, then everything is okay, everything fine. But if you turn it around and it's an A or an E, I, O, U, then the rule would be violated. So this is the reason why you need to check A and 7, but not 4 and P.
Yeah, because of that, because I'm so very, very lazy, then I just only A to check the second rule. So if I have to check another card, I will pick 7, Phillips.
Yeah. So someone also said, I am so lazy that I'm too lazy to think about it, so I will just turn around all 4 cards. Okay, thank you very much. For everyone, I will repeat it again to let it sink in a little bit.
Yeah.
To understand it. The reason for why you don't need to turn around the 4 and the P is for both the same idea. The idea is that it doesn't matter what is on the other side. For card number 4, it doesn't matter if on the other side it's a vowel, then the rule is true. If it is not a vowel, the rule is still true, because the rule just talks about vowel. It doesn't care about non-vowels. And the same goes for the P. The rule just says if vowel, then even. But it is not a vowel, so it doesn't matter. No, it doesn't matter which number is on the backside. You don't need to check it. For number A, the first card, letter A, it's clear. You need to check it because the rule says if it's a vowel, and it is, then it must be even. So you need to check it. For 7, it's more tricky. It would be problematic if it was a vowel, because then the rule would be violated. If it is not a vowel, it's okay, but you don't know it. That's why you need to check it. So I think there are at least 2 options. The one option is someone still doesn't understand it. I hope that option doesn't apply for too many. And the other option is you understand it and you find it difficult. That's okay. The other option is you understand it, and now with the explanation, or when you take more time and think about it, you will eventually think it's quite simple, actually. If you know the answer, then it's really simple. And if you know the logical explanation for it, how to find the answer, it's quite simple. But you didn't know it before, then maybe it's interesting for you. Because this is exactly the case where I think things can be quite simple to identify, but if you have no sensitivity for this way of thinking, you will not find the solution. Okay. So the next topic, the second part, is what is important when you conduct your own research. Maybe, hopefully, everyone of you has heard of the most basic structure. It's not always like this. It depends on the field also. But very often you have this structure of any manuscript. And the structure of the manuscript is identical to your procedure, how to do the research, basically. You begin with an introduction, where you read about the literature, where you get the knowledge, where you raise your questions. You follow up with the methods, where you implement the study. You then show your results. Then you discuss them, you make interpretations, you put the data into context, and then you draw your conclusions. I think, or I hope anyone has an idea what to put into these chapters. Introduction is basically the background, the current knowledge, what is not known, what are deficits. And from these deficits, you will derive your questions, your hypothesis, the goal of the research. In the methods, you put everything that is done, that is implemented to do the study. And you need to provide all information that other ones need to replicate the same study. So it must be quite detailed. The results is very important to be 100% objective. Just show the data, the number, the figures, the tables, the statistical outcome in form of text. No evaluation, not saying it's high, it's low, it's good, it's bad, nothing like this. It's just 5, 4, more than the other, lower than the other, but not it's a good result, it's a high jump, nothing like this. In the discussion, you make assessment, you interpret the data, the results. you say, oh, this is a very high jump. Why is it a high jump? You need to put in context. You add other references. Oh, usually people jump like this, referring to this study. Oh, world record is like this, referring to the study. So compared to all these, that's a high jump. You also need to show how you can apply these results. Oh, because this leads to a high jump, you should do this kind of training. It was working quite well. You should also, if you have, provide the limitations of your study. Well, I didn't investigate how it affects the sprint time, so I don't know about sprinting. But for jump, it was good, something like this. And then drawing the conclusion in a very condensed way, like not talking much, very condensed, put the main information that are required or were found to answer your main questions of this research. And show what is future perspectives, what needs to be done, what can be done, what will be done. In the introduction, you define at the end the questions you have, your goals, and or hypothesis. And these are basically the most important thing in your research, because anything before the questions, goals, and hypothesis, everything must lead to these questions, goals, and hypothesis. And everything afterwards must serve to answer these questions, to reach these goals, and to falsify or verify the hypothesis. So this is the core. This is the core of your study. It's not the results only because it's in the middle. No, it's this. So as I said, this is the introduction, is the basis, is the fundamental thing of your study. Everything later builds on what you found out in your literature research, what you defined as questions. And everything from then on must stringently come from, lead to the questions and derive from the questions. They are so crucial and so important because if you make some mistakes in the introduction, you were not, for example, reading the right literature, you were missing some important information, you didn't know about something just because you didn't read it or you didn't know about it, didn't understand it. The whole concept of the rest of your study is maybe for the trash, because if you lack some information, for example, and then you raise a question that was answered already, then everything you do for the rest of your study is nonsense. It's just not required. Or if you apply inappropriate methods, for example, another study which you missed, which you didn't read, has already found out that for this kind of questions, it's recommended to follow a certain specific way of how to get the data or how to process the data, how to filter them, how to cluster or categorize your sample or something, and you didn't do it. Then all the data you collected was not appropriate. And this was known already before you did the study. You just missed the information. So this is why, in my opinion, the introduction part and all the work and effort you put into the introduction will hugely affect the quality of your entire study. There is no good methodology, no good statistics if the introduction and the purpose of your study was done poorly. So it's very, very, very important to do this right in the beginning. Yeah, that's the most important message to take away here is the earlier you make an error, the harder or even impossible it is to make it, to set it right again at later stages. So when you make an error in the results section, the entire discussion may change. You may be able to set the results right and adapt the discussion, but maybe the whole point of the discussion must change. If you make an error in the methods when you collect the data, your entire results section may be wrong, and you must adapt it or must change it. You must run all the statistics again. Maybe you must even collect new data. If you made an error in the introduction already, your entire method was wrong. Your entire study may be pointless. So the earlier an error occurs, the harder or maybe even impossible it is to adapt it at later stages. So it's really valuable to do it right in the beginning and then avoid troubles later on that will be a real pain in your butt. I want to focus on the first two chapters a little bit. And I want to highlight what are some phases of where critical errors sometimes appear. So sometimes I do some co-tutoring for student final thesis. And these are some stages where I found often errors happening that are really unnecessary, I think, and very painful. The first one is to define the right goals for your study. And this is related to doing the research right. I know for many students that, of course, you want to finish it as fast as possible. So sometimes you just look for some research. Oh, you find something. Okay, it's done. I have the references, one reference, add it to your manuscript, and this point is done. Make the next one, next one, next one. Oh, okay, then it's written. Oh, I have a certain number of pages for the introduction, which I need, and that's fine. But the problems will not come and will not show in the introduction. They will show later on, and then it's very, very hard to change something or to make it good suddenly. So defining the right goals that are properly based on the literature is very, very important. One thing in this regard is you should, for everything you do, you should have a reason. You should have a reference or a very good explanation for any decision you do. If you don't, then think about why you do it this way and if it is the proper way, or doing some research how to do it. The second stage and the third is both in the method section. The second one is developing the study design, including sample experimental protocols, devices, defining the right variables and how they are calculated, and then the statistics. So that's a very wide description. But basically, it says anything you plan before you do it, check that the plan is solid, that the plan is first suitable for your goals, so that the data you will get serve to reach your goals, and that these are in line with recommendations from the literature or with best practices. Otherwise, all the things you collect or you do is maybe you need to do it again. Maybe you need a different sample. Maybe, for example, you collected healthy people and then you find out, oh, I needed unhealthy people or something like this. For example, I was last week receiving a manuscript, a thesis it was, and there someone wanted to investigate asymmetry in gait. And what he did was adding weight to one leg, but not the other one. And then he wanted to investigate asymmetric gait. The problem was so what he did was using a healthy sample. And the result showed there was not really any differences in the gait, no asymmetry in the gait. And the reason is somewhat simple. The reason is that healthy people are able to compensate these external stimuli to keep up a still symmetric gait. So he added weight, but the people still go symmetrically, because this is what healthy people do. It would be different if he investigated only people with a limb injury on one side, but not the other one. Then it's injured, it's not healthy, it's likely it has not the ability to compensate these problems. That's because it's injured. Then it would be a different story. But like this, all the data basically is, you cannot use it because he wanted to investigate asymmetric gait, but there was no asymmetric gait. So be sure that the plan you develop is appropriate to reaching your goals and answering your questions. And then the third stage is specifying the data processing. This is something very specific now and very simple, I think. It's things like, how do you filter your data? You collect the data, you do your study and so on, and then how do you deal with your data? There are, for most of the types of data, there are recommendations and best practices how to do it. So there are papers on how to filter kinematic data from such sort of devices in certain movements like running or walking, or in jumping, or in jump landing. Different recommendations for kinetic data, different recommendations for EMG data. And you need to get the best idea how to process them and not doing it randomly. So it's not enough to check one paper and see, oh, they used this kind of filter, 5 Hertz, and then I do the same. Because maybe they did it wrong. Check how many of them did it, and check if there are studies that try to identify the best way of, for example, filtering. That's much more valid and helpful for you to apply the best way. The problem that derives later on is, if you process your data in an inappropriate way, then, for example, a reviewer or your supervisor or your teacher will say, well, yeah, why did you do it this way? Because this is the wrong way. And then all the data is basically wrong. All the statistics is maybe wrong. Maybe it matters, maybe it makes a difference, maybe it makes no difference. But if it makes, then it's a real pain. You need to change everything. So it's very easy to avoid this. So at each of these stages, what can you do to avoid it? If you have any uncertainty, or if there are some doubts during these phases, then go into the literature about your topic, looking for similar goals where people applied the same or similar methods, and see what they did. Collect multiple ideas, what other people did, and especially consider manuscripts where they try to identify the best practice for doing this type of processing. Or there are also guidelines, published guidelines how to do it, or published recommendations. And also consider some critics. Sometimes people make papers, like critical papers, on a specific method. I also did this just this year, published this year, so a new one. A critic about how a local position measurement can be used for accelerations. So this is very, very helpful for others. When they want to use it, they will know better and understand how to use it to avoid problems, how to use it in a right way. And then the final thing is, ask the people around you. Ask your peers, so your student colleagues, or maybe older students, or PhD students, ask a tutor, or of course your supervisor. And do this before you take your next step. And I don't know how teaching mentality is in Indonesia, but in Taiwan, I experienced that students don't like asking a lot. They only report and they hide the problems and they hope no one will see it. So my recommendation for the quality of your work, maybe in your environment, it's not the wisest way as a student perspective, this is up to you, but for the quality of the work, it's much better to not only report the best results and hope to get away with all the things that were wrong, but to also in the presentation, when you present something, to ask for other people's opinion and for your supervisor's opinion, and ask about your plan if you should proceed as you plan it before you do it. And this is important, especially in the beginning of everything you do. If everything is done already, then there is not so much reason to ask anymore. And then you are, in fact, at the stage where you hope you did the best thing. Hopefully you also tried honestly to do the best thing. But in the beginning, just ask. Make sure, get all the information you get, collect everything you get, trying to get the best you can do. And this, for this, asking is essential. So as I said, introduction is the basis of everything. You build everything else on the introduction. And the whole manuscript and everything you do, it follows stringently from one chapter to the next one. This goes for macro, meso, and micro levels. Macro being the grand scheme of your work, from introduction to methods, results. Everything should be clear. Everything should be a logical consequence, one leading to the other. If a reader reads your introduction, at the end of the introduction, the reader should have an idea and know what kind of methods you will use. Because the methods, without reading them, the methods should be a logical consequence of the introduction. If you write an introduction and every researcher in the world would make different methods to answer these questions, then maybe your questions were very vague, not very clear. If you read the methods and any researcher in the world would, with the same data, get different results, then the methods were not clear. So in the end of the introduction, you should be able to predict to a certain degree in what kind of direction the methods will go. The same goes for the results at the end of the methods. The same goes or similar for the discussion at the end of the results, and so on. It should be a logical consequence, one leading to the other. The meso level means from one paragraph to the next one. So within one chapter, within the introduction, you have different paragraphs. And also here, one should logically, stringently lead to the next one. No jumping around from one topic to the other one. And now I talk about contraction speed. Oh, and by the way, also nutrition is important. And oh, by the way, the coach has a lot of influence. But no jumping around. Have a golden line which you follow, a straight line from the beginning of the introduction towards your goals, the research questions. And if you have the straight line, that's already good. That's already really good. And it's even better if the perceived jump distance from one paragraph to the other is very similar. So you don't suddenly make a large step and you need to process a lot of information suddenly when reading. And then the next one is very slow and very little information in an entire paragraph. And so having a constant pace in how you progress your manuscript. would be even better. But the first important thing is not jumping around. And micro level is within sentences. So even within sentences, you can have multiple statements. Don't jump around too much. Have a stringent sequence. Stringency and the golden line of your manuscript can a little be, at least the appearance can be faked a little bit by some small words that link different sentences. And some example of these words are therefore, nevertheless, in contrast. These are words where you build up a relationship between the one statement and the next one. And it gives the impression that they are linked to each other. For example, if you use therefore, then it sounds, it tells you that the next sentence is a consequence of the first one. So it has a relationship. What I mean by don't fake it by using these words is if there is this connection between the sentences, very often you don't even need these words, but very often you read articles or texts where these words are used, but in fact the topic of the statements that follow do not suggest that these words should be used there. Like, for example, using therefore, but then what follows is no consequence of the first one. Or using in contrast, but what follows is no contrast of the first one. So this is a strategy to fake relationship, to fake a stringent structure in your writing, which is not supported by the actual content. It depends on what you write, but for scientific writing, you should be very clear, plain, and correct, of course. So there is no use case where you should use these words if they are not really what you want to express. If this is not supported by the topic, by the statements themselves. Be careful about them. And very often you don't even need them. And even without them, the reader will understand the relationship between the statements. But of course, it's not always, I don't say that using them is bad, not at all. And I don't say that whenever they are used, it's wrong or it's fake. I just say that sometimes you see text where these words are used, but the statement doesn't support this meaning. And then it's kind of faking it. And many often, if you go, let's say, if you don't read scientific works, but newspapers and so on, you will find this quite often, that an impression, a relation, a connection between apparent facts is made that is not supported by the content of the facts. So that's important for you to understand this, because otherwise you get fooled by other people who are writing something or talking in this way. And it's important for you to know if you want to give an impression, but you don't have the evidence to support it. I mean, this can happen. You can be in a situation where it's just about making your point or standing your ground, and then you may be happy to use these words and these strategies. So as I said, therefore is one of these examples. The title of this slide is therefore more about unnecessary content and redundancy. In this example, you see I talked about these words, about having them somewhat unnecessary sometimes if the content supports and indicates the stringencies anyway. So now Therefore, now I talk about more of these unnecessary content stuff that you should avoid if possible. The principle when you write something should be to remove anything that is unnecessary or redundant. This goes for paragraphs, so entire paragraphs. You should be aware of what is the purpose of this paragraph. Is it really serving reaching my goal, or describing something that was necessary for reaching my goals, or not? This goes also for sentences. Every single sentence, you should ask yourself, what is the purpose of this sentence? Why do I say this? Is this important to reach my goals? To make the reader understand why I want to reach these goals? Or after the goals, was this something essential that allowed me to reach my goal? Is this something essential to understand why I did something in a certain way to reach my goal? And it even goes for every single word. Every single word, especially when it goes to a little bit higher quality research, when you want to publish in international journals, you have a word count, a word limit. So you need to reduce your content to a certain number of words, but in the same time, you want to put very valuable and a lot of information into your manuscript, into these limited words. So for every single word, ask yourself, is this needed? Or is it just, I don't know, unnecessary to make something sound more impressive, or just inefficient writing? So use as few words as required and a structure as simple as possible to deliver this desired message accurately and clearly. In scientific writing, it's important to be simple, because sometimes the work itself is hard and difficult to understand. And the more difficult the topic itself is, the more important it is to make the writing and reading as simple as possible. Because you want the people to understand what you did, not understand not giving them struggles to even understand your text. For you, it's also very helpful to make everything as simple as possible, because then it's easier for you to find flaws and errors in the actual thing you did, not the thing you write. You can very easily use complex sentences and very sophisticated language, and everything sounds good then. You can talk this way to other people if they have lower language skills than you, to make them think, oh, this is a smart person. Yes, okay. But if it is just about the topic, and you want to ensure that the quality of the things you do is the best, then try to reduce the complexity of the text itself, or the things you say, make it the language itself as simple as possible to see very clearly the actual content, the steps that were done. And in the same time, for this, you will need less space for the same information. So again, you will condense your work, which is good. Don't make this your prime goal whenever you phrase something, but you can always, when you write something, ask yourself, is there a way how I can make it more simple? Can I simplify or shorten this phrase? So, not your prime goal, because of course your prime goal is to deliver the message, and then you write something or say something. But then when you see the text you have written, ask yourself, oh, is there another way how I can say the same thing, but make it shorter, make it more simple, more plain, but being as precise, or maybe even precise. So you want to have a high level of precision and clarification, but a very low level of complexity with respect to language. A very simple example of how to shorten things is in order to, when you describe a purpose or a goal, why you did something. I was preparing this presentation in order to show you something about logic and how to do science. This in order is almost always unnecessary. You can always say just to. So it's one word instead of three. So that's why this is a very simple example, very simple to understand. It's not an important example, but it's very simple to understand. I prepared this presentation to show you something about logic. So you don't need in order to, you can just say to. And there are many examples like this. And this is only at the micro level, word by word. But the same principle applies for sentences, for paragraphs, not so much for chapters, because you know which chapters you have to write. And this entire principle can be summarized as the KISS principle: keep it simple, stupid. This was what one of my co-tutors taught me basically every single time I was writing any text and give it to him. KISS, KISS, KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. And you will find most likely, you will write a text, you try to make it more simple and more stupid, more easy to understand. And then someone else with more experience in scientific writing will see your text and he will still say, oh my God, this is so complicated. Just keep it simple, stupid, make it more easy. That was also what happened last time when I did this course. Yeah, remove anything unnecessary or redundant. Don't say things twice the same way. It's unnecessary. That's redundancy. Use the available space for the most relevant information. Think about what is the most important things I need to tell the reader or my supervisor to understand what I did, why I did it, and what I reached. And try to find a way to put these important information in a limited space. Don't waste people's time by writing pages that are unnecessary. The wording should always be as precise as possible. This is especially in science, but also in other areas of your life, quite helpful. I mean, I don't want to say necessary because usually people don't talk in a very precise way in daily life. But it can be beneficial to be precise, and it's very beneficial to understand the precision when you listen to other people, because otherwise you can get fooled very easily by other people, especially when you talk about, for example, politicians making statements and then finding a way out in the future. Oh, no, it's a, oh, well, I just said like this. I didn't say I would do this. And many times, strictly speaking, they were correct. They did nothing wrong. So pay attention for precision. What is exactly said and what does it mean? And don't draw your conclusions based on what was said. Don't imply what someone will do based on what he said, but listen to what he really said. What was precisely said by this person? And if you do the same, it's also good for you, because if other people misunderstand you and they say, oh, no, you said something different, you can say, no, I said exactly these words, and I did what I said. If you interpret something else, something more I didn't say, that's a different problem. That's your mistake. But what I said was very precise, was very accurate, and I did what I say. We had this joke or quiz about the logicians entering a bar previously. The thing was that the three logicians enter the bar and the waitress asks, hey guys, do you want some beer? And one way of putting as much information into it as possible would be to, instead of saying, I don't know, and yes, to say, the first one could say, I want one. So this is, strictly speaking, this is not an answer to this question, because the question was something different, but he cannot answer this question anyway in a meaningful way. So instead, he could give a different information using the same amount of words, 3 words, but giving more information. Then the waitress knows, oh, okay, at least this one person wants a beer. The second one could give more information with even less words, if saying me too. And for the third one, it's the same. So just as an example, what I mean by delivering as much information as possible in a reduced available space or limited words. Okay, and that's a topic I don't want to start today. I had this last time. It's about how to correct and precisely phrase and word things. I want to let you know about this American Medical Association Manual of Style. This is the DOI address. So if you follow this DOI, you will find this manual, and there you find a long list of words that are commonly used in medical science. So also in sports science, you will often use these words and terms, with definitions and explanations of what they mean precisely and what they don't mean, and how they are confused many times. So if someone wants to dig a little bit deeper into word specific meaning and having precise wording and proper scientific language, then this is a good reference for our field of research. But that's the last thing I wanted to share with you, and that's it from my side for today. Next time I will talk about methods and statistics. Again, I will try next time to not overload you with specific things, like an instruction how to run an ANOVA of a specific type or something like this, but to give you maybe a different perspective on statistics, and just to think about it differently, maybe learning something, maybe improving understanding. So also today it was just important for me to give you something that you can listen to. Maybe you find some things a bit interesting, maybe not. And the only really important thing for me would be to think a little bit about logic, what it is. The main thing is that it's not an individual subjective impression or feeling like, oh, this feels logic or not logical to me or not. No, it is a set of very strict rules, comparable with nature rules of gravity, for example, and they apply to all topics all around the world, and you can check them, and if they are applied correctly, without knowing anything about this content, what other people talk about, anything. So this is the key message I want to deliver, and the key point I wish to be understood by you, of why it is powerful and why maybe it is interesting. So thank you very much for your time, for attendance, and we can have some questions, answers if some people have. Otherwise, I wrote my email into the chat, so you can also ask via email, or I can share some of the slides if you want to go through them. But let's see if there are some questions.
Thank you, Mr. Dr. Phillips. It's very interesting topic, and it's very important for us how to use logic and how to do writing manuscript correctly. And here in Indonesia, we always use so many language not necessary to use, but always reporting in there. So maybe next time we need just only how to wording and pricing. Maybe. So, but maybe in the workshop another time. And please, for student, you can question directly, raise your hand, and open your mic. I think Martinus Pudianto, you want asking something? Mungkin ada yang mau bertanya, Bapak Ibu semuanya. Silahkan bisa menggunakan bahasa Indonesia. Nanti akan saya coba untuk terjemahkan. Tadi ada Mbak Fitriana Bella Jaya Negara. Monggo, bisa langsung untuk bertanya.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang, Mister dan Ibu. Saya tadi ada yang ingin saya tanyakan. Di dalam penulisan kita untuk menyelesaikan tesis seperti itu, berapa literatur yang dapat kita gunakan untuk menjadi penguat penulisan yang kita lakukan itu? Misalnya ada berapa gitu? Terima kasih.
Ya, terima kasih Fitriana. Dr. Philip, Fitriana asking about the reference. So when we writing the manuscript, how many reference to make our manuscript is stronger and make people believe that we are making is good?
What do you mean by how many differences?
Yeah, reference is citation. How many citation that make people believe with our working in manuscript?
How many citation?
Yes.
So you mean references?
Yes.
Okay. So usually, most journals will provide you a limited number of references you can use for both original investigation, which is where you collect your own data, or also for reviews, where you collect information from the literature. So the same could apply for a final thesis for your studies. You could ask your supervisors if they have suggested or a limited number of references, because many journals also do this. Usually it's around 30 for original investigations. So you are limited anyways to around 30 references. So there is no need to go beyond, but in general you should. So the golden rule would be that every statement you do, which can be supported by data, that you use a reference for it. Whenever you say something that is a claim that something is in a certain way, there is a certain number of oxygen, or I don't know, a certain amount of oxygen in your blood, or certain training programs achieve good results or better results than others. Whenever you make such claims, it would be wise to add a reference that supports this claim. Also, it's very well advised for any methods you apply that you link these methods to at least one reference. Especially if it is not very common methods. And so you don't need a reference for applying an ANOVA or a t-test and so on. But for applying a certain training program, it would be good to use a reference where this training program was described with a lot of detail, where It shows the good effects of the training program, which provides the evidence why you selected this training program. The same goes for any methods that may be complicated or critical. When you use certain devices, and some people in the literature say, oh, there are some problems, some others say, oh no, it's good, then it's also good to refer to a study that talked about these problems or provided solutions. So the golden rule is whenever you make a claim, support it with a reference, and whenever you use something that was developed before your study, use the reference.
Okay, thank you very much, Philips. So, Fitriana, untuk referensi, itu bisa menggunakan referensi by original article dari asli yang penelitian dan jenisnya review. Nah, untuk original article itu sebanyaknya antara 30 referensi, sitasi. Nah, setiap yang kamu tulis, alangkah baiknya untuk menjadi background itu ada di referensi, dan juga metode yang kamu terapkan, contohnya itu mengambil program latihan atau mungkin program latihan untuk weight training atau untuk WMAX, maksimal exercise itu bisa menggunakan referensi. Nah, itu dituliskan referensi tersebut di metodenya. Sekalian kalau di bab pembahasan, nanti biasanya kan membandingkan antara hasil dan referensi sebelumnya. Nah, itu harus ada referensinya. Begitu. Kira-kira sudah mengerti yang dimaksud, Mbak Fitriana?
Terima kasih, udah masuk, udah sedikit mengerti. Terima kasih, Bu.
Orang ini lagi mengikuti pedoman peraturan rektor nomor 6 tahun 2021. 60 jurnal.
Dari Bu Setio menambahkan have a 60 article.
Tesis itu kan
untuk tesis, jadi untuk tesis ada 60 jurnal mengikuti pedoman dari rektor. Kalau yang from Philips itu manuskrip, kalau tesis minimal 60. I'm sorry Philips, so I answer with Indonesian and English.
Yeah, thank you for translation.
Oke. Bu Setia ada tambahan lagi?
Oke ya, jadi kan kalau di pasca sarjana UNES itu kan sudah ada pedomannya ya, mengikuti peraturan rektor tahun 2021 itu 60 jurnal ya, yang terdiri dari 20 jurnal internasional reputasi, kemudian 20 jurnal internasional dan 20 jurnal nasional terakreditasi. Ya, selain itu masih ada lagi tambahan 15 jurnal yang dari dalam, gitu ya, Mbak Fitriana.
Oke.
Terima kasih ya, Bu.
Oke, thank you Ibu Setio Rahayu, thank you Fitriana. Now back to the others, maybe have any question?
Assalamualaikum, selamat siang.
Ya, waalaikumsalam wabarakatuh. Selamat siang, monggo.
Selamat siang, assalamualaikum buat Putin dan Setia dan semuanya ada di sini. And good afternoon to Mr. Phillips. I need some advice and suggestion. And I'm sorry if my English is not well, but I will try. I will try. If you're doing a research, you should check the validity of content of fact of single statement. If not, you need up should I and how, because there's a different culture, different mindset, different perspective, and different needs between my country and other countries. should I do this research? Not to prove, but I will do my research in order to make a literature, make a references to do something better by a logical result. There is a different need, I think, in my country and other countries. So how I doing this research and please give your advice, your
Itu awal
suggestion
betul.
if I'm doing my research.
Thank you for the question, but Titin, could you repeat the question because the volume was so low for me? I didn't understand everything.
Okay.
I'm sorry, my English isn't well, but I will try.
No, I think it's because of my volume. It's very low.
Mungkin bisa dijelaskan kembali, Mbak, pakai bahasa Indonesia?
Ya, jadi saya menulis sebuah research, tapi tadi disampaikan oleh Mr. Philip bahwa kalau seandainya kita tidak menemukan referensi, kita bisa membuatnya, membuat referensi itu sendiri, jadi di make up gitu. Tapi bagaimana caranya? Dan saya butuh saran, kemudian butuh nasihat. Apakah saya harus menyusun itu? Karena penelitian yang saya lakukan itu dengan tujuan bukan untuk membuktikan sesuatu, tapi tujuannya adalah untuk menyampaikan bahwa hasil dari penelitian ini adalah digunakan sebagai literasi, sebagai referensi, supaya ada perubahan dan ada perbaikan.
Oke, I got it.
Melalui sebuah hasil yang logik, gitu, yang bisa dibuktikan dengan data dan angka, gitu kan. Nah, ini bagaimana saya bisa melakukan? Oke,
I got it, Mbak Yusnita.
Ya, terima kasih.
Bagus sekali
maaf,
pertanyaannya, nggak apa-apa. Mungkin tadi Philip agak kurang dengar. Oke, Philip, Yusnita asking about when she making some programs, exercise program, but is no reference before. And you said before in your presentation, we can make it up, this reference, the program. And she asking how we can make up this program. Is it okay we use our program made by us, and is this no problem? And how to apa tadi Mbak? Untuk apa lagi? Kayaknya itu aja.
Because there is a different culture, different needs, different mindset, different perspective. Jadi ada perbedaan pemikiran antara di negara kita di Indonesia dengan kebutuhan di negara lain. Jadi ini akan menyebabkan satu perbedaan gitu pada saat kita melakukan sebuah penelitian.
Okay, so it's about the exercise program because in every country have a different body. The anthropometry is different. The weather also different. Is it okay if she make by herself some program with adaptation in this in his area?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that's a very reasonable question. So it's always okay to do something new. I mean, this is part of research, right? Doing something completely new sometimes, not always. When you use a program, for example, or you want to produce a new program that has never been used before, or you want to adapt it, there are still parts of it where you have knowledge about it. Maybe similar projects, similar programs were used, or maybe some parts of the programs are known to have certain effects. So at some level, there is knowledge available about any parts of your new program or your new adaptation. And then you refer to these parts. Or there are parts or reasons why you came up with this program, then you refer to the information that leads to your ideas about making this new program. Let's say you have an absolutely new program that is not even similar to anything that existed before, but still you have reasons why you came up with this program, or you have thoughts and ideas why you think this program works. Maybe it's because it addresses a specific particle in your body, and you know something about these particles in your body and what they do in your body, because there was research about these particles. Otherwise, you would also not know. So why do you know about the effects of these particles? You use the reference. We know that these particles have such an effect. Now, I believe that this program changes the particles because maybe these particles are used in this way of energy creation, in this kind of movement or something like this. I don't know. But you must have some reasons, some ideas why you think this program in this way is having some effect or is good. And you need to provide the evidence that leads you to your thinking, that leads to your idea to develop this program. And you need to cite and refer to this evidence, whatever it is.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Philip. But I think it's too difficult to me to find an article or journal to write my manuscript, because my research is something maybe it's new in my country. What should I do if I didn't find any references or something similar in my research? Jadi saya sulit menemukan referensi yang mendekati atau mirip dengan penelitian yang saya lakukan. Seperti itu, Ibu Didi. Terima kasih.
So if you have a difficulty in finding a reference for your case, find references for your reasoning why you do it. You must have a reason why you do it, right? You don't do it for no reason. So the reader must understand why what you do is reasonable, why what you do makes sense, and to show to give this reason to the reader, you must provide a reference for your reason. Maybe not a reference for your program, because this program didn't exist, or there is no reference for such a program or anything, but you must have a reason why you do it. Share the reason and provide the evidence you can find that makes it reasonable to do what you do.
Okay, thank you.
For example, let's say we go thousands of years back, and there is no training science, not even in any theory. I mean, no raw level like in ancient Greece where they were training and so on. So there is no endurance training, nothing like this. And you think, oh, like running a little bit every day could increase your ability to run longer. So there is no evidence for any training and not for endurance, but you must have a reason why you think this. And maybe the reason is related to, oh, I see in other forms, in other fields, that our body is adapting to anything. Oh, I cut my arm and it grows again. I mean, the wound heals. There seems to be some reaction in the body to what happens to the body. Okay, then this is a reference for your reasoning. Then you can say, I observe, or we observed, other scientists observed in reality whenever we cut, the skin heals again. So it seems reasonable that the body reacts to what happens to him. So a very crazy idea could be maybe the body also reacts to running. If I run, next time I can run longer. Very crazy, very new, no evidence, no reference for it, but the reasoning is very clear, and you support your reasoning by showing other literature, other research, where people cut themselves 100 times and they saw, oh, every time the skin heals again. Then this is the reference for your reasoning. Is this helpful or clearing it up?
Yes, Mr. Philip, I think I got it. I think I should write my reason clearly and clear all of my research. I should write the reason very clearly and very detailed, like that.
What is the specific case for you?
I read something about periodization program for youth athlete. I think in my country it's something new maybe. I read a periodization undulating periodization for youth athlete, and I think by my research it could be some research, some reference or literature for other coach to do the program, or the training program, because everybody, almost any coach in my country, they use linear periodization, and I think it they think by the linear periodization it could be develop the performance of the athlete, but the undulating cannot be used by the youth athlete. So I make the research, but I think in my country it's too difficult if I search for the article, but in other countries they said you can use to develop the strength, especially strength for climbing. I mean, my sport is sport climbing, which is sport climbing is predominant in strength. So the undulating periodization, I think, is more effective than the linear. I mean, non-linear is undulating periodization. So I do the research in for 2 years before, and I see the result. I see there is a development of strength, development of speed by the athlete of sport climbing. But if I write in a manuscript, I face and I found the difficultness.
Okay, so what I understood is that you have a specific training program, and you think it's more effective. And you also said because, and then I didn't understand your reasoning why you think it's more effective. But this is exactly the important thing. And what you should do is to check the literature and search for anything that is related to what you just said, why you think it's more effective. So this reason you said, because blah, 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 which I didn't understand, but it's also not important because I don't know the literature about it anyway. So I cannot tell you the answer, but I just can tell you how to proceed with it. So you said you think it's more effective because you have some reason for it. Check the literature for this reason. What can you find about this reason, and how is this reason related to this program how can these reasons theoretically explain any effect of the program? This and everything you find in the literature about these reasons you mentioned will be helpful, supportive, maybe not evidence, but maybe indications.
So I should break down the detail like that to explain my reason like that.
Explore your reason, yeah, and make
explore
it.
My reason.
Explore your reason and support your reason.
Thank you for your advice, Mr. Philip. I think it's very helpful for me. Terima kasih, Bu Titin. Semoga nanti saya dibantu untuk diberikan pencerahan kembali, Bu Titin. Dan Bu Setia, terima kasih. Thank you, Mr. Philip.
Thank you too.
Thank you. Philip, Isnita is a coach of rock climbing. She is a coach in the Pekalongan, some of city in Indonesia. She was a national climber.
Okay, cool.
Well, yes,
Yeah.
rock climber.
Sport climbing,
Wall
climbing,
climbing.
Mr.
Rock
Philip.
climbing, yeah.
I have one athlete who break down the speed record last year in USA.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
I think climbing as a sport is interesting to me because it allows for very specific training, very sport-specific training. And probably, maybe there is not too much detailed literature about it because it's a niche sport, not a very popular sport like soccer or something like this.
Yeah, that's right, Mr. Philip.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So maybe you can have a 3 supervisor. Philip also as your supervisor.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
I do like
nanti
climbing.
saya mohon dibantu. Thank you,
Yeah.
Mr. Philip, if you don't mind.
Thank you. Okay, Philip, because the time is up already done, and maybe we don't need, if you have something to do,
of course.
You want a teaching, right? You want a teaching again.
Have work to do, right?
Yeah, and we have, wait a minute. Dr. Phillips, wait a minute.
I think it is Fuchs, not Fuchs.
Anyone want asking again? Mr. Melody, you want asking something?
No, I think the spell is Philip X Fuchs, not Fuchs.
Fuchs, yeah.
Fuchs, yeah.
Fuchs.
Not Fuchs.
Okay. Could you to stop the sharing, and I will share some certificate. Okay. Dr. Hayu.
Suara saya bisa kedengaran?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, bisa.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Philip, for a very clear and very excellent presentation. We hope the student and participant will be more open-minded and have insight into research methodology so that can be produce good and quality thesis and dissertation, especially for my student, physical education, graduate and postgraduate program Universitas Negeri Semarang. Okay, thank you very much to all students and participants. Thank you, Bu Titin. They will give a certificate of appreciation to Dr. Philip. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you too. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Philip. And I hope you're still with us, even though you're everywhere in other country. You can to be our guest lecturer, or maybe someday when no COVID again, you come to Indonesia.
Yeah.
And help us.
Next month I will do the session from Germany.
Germany?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Good.
Yeah, 很好棒. Okay, so for our next session, can we take a picture together? Please turn on your camera. Here has Mr. Purnaloberto. Okay. Other, please, on your camera. Mr. Melody, would you help us to taking picture?
Yeah, but mostly the camera is still off. I will ask in Indonesian, maybe they will turn on the. Ya, Bapak Ibu yang ikut acara ini mohon berkenan untuk menghidupkan kamera. Kami akan mengambil dokumentasi gambar. Ya, Bapak Ibu yang mengikuti acara ini berkenan untuk menghidupkan kamera. Kami akan mengambil beberapa dokumentasi gambar untuk kami laporkan. Ya, hanya kamera saja, jangan mikrofon, Pak Imron. Kameranya, jangan mikrofonnya. Ramai itu di situ. Ya. Oke, I will come up for the picture taking. Saya akan menghitung pengambilan gambarnya. I will count from 3. Saya akan menghitung dari 3. 3, 2, 1. This is for the first page. I have 2 page. I will save the first page first. Ada 2 halaman di saya. Ini saya baru ngambil lembar pertama. Mohon ditunggu, saya akan mengambil halaman yang kedua. Okay, I will take the second page on my monitor. 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you. I already have 2 screen of Zoom on my monitor. Thank you. Back to you, Mrs. Titin.
Thank you, Mas Meldi.
Ya, sama-sama Ibu.
Okay,
Thank you, Philips.
Thank you too.
Philip, and see you next time.
Okay.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you
See you
very
soon.
much. Please. See you next time. See you on 17th of May. We will
Alright.
have a lecture about the statistics.
And you will lecturing on from Germany, if I am not mistaken. Yeah, you
Sure.
you will come to Germany on next September.
Huh?
Kapan
May.
tadi Bu?
Yeah.
May.
Yeah,
May.
Maybe yes, maybe no.
Yeah.
next week I travel there.
Oh, next week. Okay, we'll
Okay.
travel.
So have a safe flight.
Thank you.
Phillips. And thank you for everyone for joining with us. And I hope this interesting topic and all of you can understand and you got it. Learn more from Mr. Phillips. And maybe next time Mr. Phillips can come to Indonesia and have teach us how to do the good researcher. Okay, I think it's enough for today. Thank you very much, everyone. Now I will close with said Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Our guest lecture finished. Guest lecture today already done. See you next time. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
See you, Philips.
See you, Phillips.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Philip, see you all.
Bye.
See you.
Terima kasih Bu Titin dan Bu Setia.
Yeah.
Terima kasih.
See you.
Lupa, saya belum mengirimkan apa tadi sertifikatnya ya. Aduh, maaf.
Link sertifikat sebentar
Ya.
ya. Ditunggu
Maaf
link.
juga Bu,
Hmm?
atas screenshotnya tadi Bu,
Yang screenshot yang mana?
yang Ibu mengantuk.
Jangan Marco, Bu.
Iya, nggak apa-apa. Ngantuk saya. Ini tadi sampai kelupaan ya. Maaf ya, karena saking
Keren.
asiknya.
link presensi dan sertifikat ya.
Ya.
Ini dari Bu Titin, silahkan di copy dulu.
Ya, linknya sudah saya masukkan di chat. Silahkan bisa ditulis, nanti sertifikat akan langsung terkirim. Nggak usah mampir ke saya, ngirimnya langsung ke email. Jadi pastikan emailnya yang benar. Ini kok ada mantan pembimbingan saya kayaknya, Ika Nilawati, benar kayak atau salah ya?
Oh, iya Bu. Ikut
Oke.
Bu, join.
Ya, terima kasih. Sekarang di mana?
Di Ngutiwalu ya Bu.
Oh, sip, keren. Lanjutkan.
Thank you.
Ya, tolong ya diisi semua untuk sertifikatnya.
Oh, Ika ini yang kemarin saya review ini ya, PKD-nya ya. Mbak Ika Nilawati UNW.
Ya Bu Setia.
Di Waluyo.